Next about 5 or 10 seconds, we will be live. I will just tell you when it has fully loaded and when we are live.
Okay.
Best of luck.
Thanks. If you could just tell me on YouTube if there's any questions, or we can leave that at the end.
Yes.
5 or 10 seconds
to the end.
I will just tell you when it has fully loaded and when we are live.
Cool.
So you see how you have the video stream open?
If you could just tell me on YouTube if there's any questions, or we can leave that at the end.
Yes. 5 or 10 seconds to the end. I will just tell you when it has fully loaded.
Cool.
Okay, there we go. Fantastic. So yeah, we're live, so you can get started whenever you like.
Perfect. Right, let me share my screen. You know what? Let me just do that in a bit. Do we know? Is anyone have joined yet?
I can just check that for you real quick.
Is it recorded?
It is automatically recorded by default, but we have the assumption that we're taking it down immediately afterwards. Unless you consent, then we can leave it up.
Okay, good.
5 people are watching right now.
Oh, okay, no pressure. Okay, I guess we should get started. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between. Thank you for joining me in this live stream session of Internet of Things and Circular Economy. You must be very interested in circular economy and how Internet of Things can enable circular economy transition. So let's do a little bit of interaction. In the chat box, I believe there's this function. Tell me if you're a student, what's your major, which year you are in, and if you've heard of circular economy before. And if you're just a friend, just say hi, good morning. Aditya, if you could let me know.
I shall. So the first comment is actually by me. So my major is computer science and mathematics. I'm a third year, and I've never heard of the circular economy.
That's exciting. Always love to tell people about circular economy. Okay, let me kick off and share my screen. Could you all see my screen now?
There is a 15 to 20 second delay, so they will see it.
Okay.
We have another comment, by the way. Somebody's doing an MSc in artificial intelligence, and they have never heard of the circular economy either.
Love it. Good to know. Because a huge section of this talk today will be on an introduction to circular economy in order to make sense how technologies like Internet of Things could help accelerate. So it would be my pleasure to introduce you to the concepts of circular economy. So first up, a quick introduction about myself. My name is Chunli. I actually graduated from Edinburgh University a few years back, and I studied economics with finance. And I worked at Deutsche Bank for about 3 years on the asset management arm. And then I left the banking industry and started this Internet of Things startup in Edinburgh called WeKit. And we offer smart home appliances that you can control remotely from your mobile phone, or smart speakers like Alexa and Google Home. And let me show you a quick video of the exact things I'm working on. So, screen share, it should be this one. Right, let's try that.
Alexa, turn on the kettle.
Okay.
Alexa, set the kettle to 85 degrees.
Okay.
Go back to. So that's the product we recently.
If you've been curious about turning your home into a smart home, but if you don't know where to begin because everything out there just seems kind of overwhelming with the amount of smart home solutions out there, this is going to be the video for you. My name's Josh Tedder. I'm from 6 Months Later, and in this video, I'm.
Sorry about that. Okay, are we back on? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So in a nutshell, that's what WeCat does. This is the kind of smart home product, the Internet of Things devices we offer to consumers. And throughout this presentation, we're going to use this as an example on how Internet of Things can enable circular economy in an ideal world. So, and also on the side, I also consult with Chinese manufacturers on product development. And there are a lot of interesting observations I will share with you throughout this presentation. So first thing first, circular economy principles. So we live in a linear economy where at the moment, we take natural resources, we make a product, we sell them, use it, and then after we finish using them, we dispose it. That's done. That's the current linear economy we live in at the moment. And in a circular economy world, all the waste and pollution is supposed to feed back to the very beginning. Here we're going to watch another short video from Ellen MacArthur Foundation, who is the thought leader in circular economy. And we're gonna dive deeper into that.
Living systems have been around for a few billion years and will be around for many more. In the living world, there's no landfill. Instead, materials flow. One species' waste is another's food. Energy is provided by the sun. Things grow, then die, and nutrients return to the soil safely. And it works. Yet as humans, we've adopted a linear approach. We take, we make, and we dispose. A new phone.
I don't think that's working. Apologies. Let's try that again. Are you guys seeing the video at the moment?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Using share.
And will be around for many more. In the living world, there's no landfill. Instead, materials flow. One species' waste is another's food. Energy is provided by the sun. Things grow, then die, and nutrients return to the soil safely. And it works. Yet as humans, we've adopted a linear approach. We take, we make, and we dispose. A new phone comes out, so we ditch the old one. Our washing machine packs up, so we buy another. Each time we do this, we're eating into a finite supply of resources and often producing toxic waste. It simply can't work long term. So what can? If we accept that the living world's cyclical model works, can we change our way of thinking so that we too operate a circular economy? Let's start with the biological cycle. How can our waste build capital rather than reduce it? By rethinking and redesigning products and components, and the packaging they come in, we can create safe and compostable materials that help grow more stuff. As they say in the movies, no resources have been lost in the making of this material. So what about the washing machines, mobile phones, fridges? We know they don't biodegrade. Here, we're talking about another sort of rethink, a way to cycle valuable metals, polymers, and alloys so they maintain their quality and continue to be useful beyond the shelf life of individual products. What if the goods of today became the resources of tomorrow? It makes commercial sense. Instead of the throw away and replace culture we've become used to, we'd adopt a return and renew one, where products and components are designed to be disassembled and regenerated. One solution may be to rethink the way we view ownership. What if we never actually owned our technologies? We simply licensed them from the manufacturers. Now, let's put these two cycles together. Imagine if we could design products to come back to their makers, their technical materials being reused and their biological parts increasing agricultural value. And imagine that these products are made and transported using renewable energy. Here we have a model that builds prosperity long term. And the good news is, there are already companies out there who are beginning to adopt this way of working. But the circular economy isn't about one manufacturer changing one product. It's about all the interconnecting companies that form our infrastructure and economy coming together. It's about energy. It's about rethinking the operating system itself. We have a fantastic opportunity to open new perspectives and new horizons. Instead of remaining trapped in the frustrations of the present, with creativity and innovation, we really can rethink and redesign our future.
Right. So that's my favorite video to explain what circular economy is about. So a lot of time when I ask people, have you heard of circular economy? And from my own experience, 8 out of 10 would say, yes, it's about recycle, right? But actually it's a lot more than that. And for those of you who have not, who is very new to circular economy, this is a very, probably one of the most iconic diagrams in the circular economy field. This is a butterfly diagram developed by Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And there are two sides. On the left-hand side, we have the renewable flow management, and on the right-hand side, we have the stock management. And renewable flow management on the left-hand side is a lot on the industrial B2B side, and it's a lot less seen in the literature in social media. And for the purpose of this presentation, we are going to leave that out of the discussion, and we're going to focus on the right-hand side of the flow. So as you can see, we have many loops. You might hear a lot about closing the loops in circular economy, and these are the loops we're talking about. And there is a matter of prioritization in circular economy. We want to stay to as center as possible in this loop. By that, we mean if we can refurbish, remanufacture, we don't recycle. If we can reuse, redistribute, let's try not to refurbish them. And if we can share, maintain, keep using it, let's try not to, you know, go further to the outer loop. Essentially, it's a lot about minimizing the energy we use, and also utilize the material efficiency in a society. So if this is something you are interested in to explore further, whether it's in your study or as a career option, this is the chart you need to master. You can just Google Ellen MacArthur Foundation Circular Economy Diagram. It's a brilliant chart. So so circular economy concept is still very early in development. In literature, you still see different versions of what people think the key principles are. And here, again, for this presentation, we're going to stick with the key 3 principles developed by Ellen MacArthur Foundation, being number 1, design out waste and pollution. You may also hear the version of waste equals food. So, for example, in Scotland, we have a lot of whiskey distilleries, right? And at the end of fermentation, there is a lot of residual grains, and it's always been just a waste. But actually, these residual grains, they're great stock for feeding the kettles in you know, all the cattle farms up in Scotland. So that's one way to use making waste as a food. And an opposite example would be, say, for example, the Wicked Smart Wi-Fi kettle. If some component breaks down, you know, it's going to end up in a household recycling bin. It's going to be a waste and cause pollutions. At the moment, there's little we can do about it. And so as a lot of our smartphones at the moment, we are getting there to make it more recyclable, more circular, to reprocess a lot of the materials in the smartphones. But at the moment, it's largely linear, and we are not really utilizing the waste we are creating from a lot of the products. So designing out waste and pollution, and the emphasis is really on the design, because in order to enable circular economy as a vision, a lot of the thought and planning has to go back to the product design at the first place in order to enable the rest of the flow. Second, keep products and materials in use. Again, this is one of the probably the most to the core of circular economy. And there are 2 dimensions to that. One dimension would be how can you utilize the material use? And the second would be how can you extend the product life cycle? So extend the useful product life cycle is quite straightforward. For example, if, let's say, again, we get smart Wi-Fi kettle, it's got a factory manufacturing warranty for 2 years. How can we make that 20 or even 100, making that the last kettle you will ever need? That's extend useful product life. And then the other dimension is how do you utilize the material use? And a great illustration for this aspect would be the sharing economy. I'm not sure if you're all joining in from Edinburgh, or if you've been a student of Edinburgh University. You might have noticed in Edinburgh, in city centre, we have this enterprise car club. Instead of owning a car, you access to the car whenever you need to. You just book it on the app. So there's this statistics on car in cities, in urban area. It goes like, normally cars are parked 70% of the time in a city. So so instead of owning a car, by sharing a car, we, instead of using a car for 30% of the time, we create less cars, but then maximize the cars that's already out there. So that's a way of utilizing materials. So these are the 2 dimensions of keeping products and materials in use. And the third would be regenerate natural system. So that's to the contrary of our linear economy, where we exhaust natural resources. We just basically take from our Mother Earth and, you know, gives nothing back. And also a lot about using renewable energy wherever we can. So regenerative natural systems. And fourth, it's something I personally quite like when it comes to thinking about circular economy solutions. It's about thinking in a system. So so instead of being fixated on the particular product in your particular industry, in your particular location. When we think about circular economy solutions, let's try to think outside the box, think outside our system, because closing the loop doesn't really mean, you know, the waste coming from one product has to go back to that exact product. We never know where the demand for the waste will come from. It might not be this product. It might be some companies totally outside Edinburgh, outside the UK, you know, outside Europe. And it might not be in the same industry. It might coming from a complete different industry. So think in a system, think without a geopolitical restriction. Well, the current climate isn't really helping, but think in a system, in a holistic system. So that's the key circular economy principles. Next is the key process to enable circular economy. So first, acquisition. Acquisition is a lot about collecting the right amount of volumes of different materials at the right price to make them, to create product and offer services. And then reprocessing. Once products are out of service, how do you reprocess? How do you acquire this material and process in a way that they can become food to feed into a different loop? And then remarketing is about how do you generate the demand? How do you identify the market who are willing to take the reprocessed material and product? And all of this needs to be at the right price. And if any component of this process fails, we will not be able to close the loop. So the key process of circular economy. Now, after all of these fascinating circular economy ideas, how can we actually implement? What's the commercial applications of circular economy? Or how, in theory, should we apply them in daily life? So it's all grand, right? But is there any actual commercial value in implementing circular economies? We're going to be a little bit capitalist here when we approach the commercial value. So number one, sourcing value. Sourcing value refers to the direct cost reduction coming from closing the loop. For example, again, a lot of home appliances, the premium ones are made of stainless steel versus plastic, which is relatively premium material. So by sourcing, instead of sourcing stainless steels from virgin materials, if we can source it from an alternative source, for example, recycled stainless steel at the right price, it may be able to help save a lot of costs from sourcing from virgin material. That's one way of reducing costs, the sourcing value. The second is environmental value. And in theory, by implementing any circular economy initiatives, we should be able to reduce carbon footprint, reduce energy demand, and increase material efficiency. But here, the commercial value refers, on an academic language, it refers a lot to the benefit coming from being regulatory compliance. If tomorrow the UK government or EU decide to implement this requirement in order to help business, to force businesses to achieve circular economy, to reduce carbon footprint, that would be another environmental value, being compliant to regulatory and have a better green image. The third one would be customer value, and this is a lot about branding, the value or the revenue you obtain from an improved image, better customer loyalty, branding aspect. And then the fourth, information value. This is personally I find very fascinating. So for business, by getting involved in closing the loops, you will actually be able to obtain a lot of data, such as product failure rate, the demand of the product, and also a lot of user behavior, and understand, really have as a product provider, the company who offers a product really understand, have a first sight on your feedback from your customers. And that's essentially what my my consulting role is about to the factors. But there's a job created just to gather consumer user behavior. But if companies can closing the loops themselves, they will be able to gather this information first-handed directly from the consumers. So that's a very interesting and an area that hasn't really been tapped into by lots of the business in the industry. So these are the 4 key commercial values of circular economy for businesses. So now, how do we actually implement circular economy initiatives? And so far, there are 3 major business models: product-oriented, use-oriented, and result-oriented. And let's take a car as an example. Product-oriented would be rather traditional, linear, for example, in relative terms. So the ownership is on the consumer. We buy a car, we own the car. And for a car manufacturer, once the car is sold, job done. You've got your majority of your revenue. That's you done. The incentive for implementing more circular economy initiatives is very limited. And now, when it comes to usage-oriented, result-oriented, there's a major shift on the ownership. So instead of consumers owning the car, the ownership is on the car manufacturers. So on the car, an usage-oriented example would be instead of you owning the car, paying for the entire ownership, you pay for gaining access to the car. You pay by how many hours you've driven the car, and then a result-oriented would be, it doesn't matter how long you access the car for, you will only pay when you've driven X miles, for example. And from a business perspective, the result-oriented is the most costly. I mean, use-oriented is also very costly compared to product-oriented, because the last 2, there's a lot of upfront costs because you don't get paid after you've made the cars. And for result-oriented, you don't even get paid after the users have access to the car. You only get paid when they've driven the car. So the upfront investment is very high, and the payback period can be very long. So as a person who runs a startup, it's finance, it's probably one of the most crucial aspects. It's very realistic, very cruel aspect that every business to have to, to deal with. So it's a great, usage-oriented and result-oriented is a great concept, but it's very challenging to implement. And also for result-oriented, sometimes for certain industry, it's very tricky to reach agreement with the user. How do you measure the performance? And also the quality of the performance. This is it's very ambiguous to reach agreement on. So lots of challenges in actual implementation of these business models. Just conscious about the time. Okay. Next up, let's look at some product design. So if we think about the very first principle of circular economy, it's design out waste and pollution. So 90% of implementing a circular economy effectively has to go back to the product design. So what are the key design principles we need to keep in mind when we want to approach circular economy product solutions? Here are 3. I mean, it's not definite. It's just the 3 I think would be very helpful to think, to have in mind. So first of all, modular and standardized. One good example would be chargers. Wouldn't it be nice if one day all the, we're getting there, but if one day, it doesn't matter if it's a laptop or whether it's Android or iOS, your iPhones, the chargers are all the same. So that's standardized. By standardize all the components, it makes the repair refurbishment much easier. You don't have to source specifically for a unique type of component is widely available, and by standardizing them, we have economy of scale. Just makes everything easier. I'm not sure if you heard of the Remakery in Edinburgh. It's a second-hand goods repair shop down in Leith in the northeast of Edinburgh. And one of their key challenges is actually to source the component for laptops, for example, for other things. So if we can standardize the components in a particular product, that would make circular economy much easier. And also modular means so let me give the example of, again, the smart Wi-Fi kettle. A lot of the components are laser sealed in a way that is not reversible. So the only way to break down the component is to hammer down the kettles into pieces. So it's not as simple as, unscrew a nail and then you can open the kettle and then you can replace certain components. For many reasons, because the increased health and safety demand, laser seal is probably the most reliable way of making sure the water won't leak outside the kettle. And also for aesthetic purpose, these days in design, people love to have a bit of curve, and so all this, fashion aspect of the design demand. So modular and standardized. And second is upgradability. A lot of time when we talk about fast fashion, we blame the consumers for want new clothes, new things fast, or we blame the marketing practice. However, if instead of trying to ask people to change their behavior, why don't we embed this principle into the product design? When we make a product design, make it modular in a way that if one day there's a new trending color or new trending material, we can easily take out the outer layer of the product and replace it with the latest. So upgradability. And third would be material longevity. So an example would be, so for a lot of the home appliance products, the core functional components, they are very durable. A lot of time, the reason they fail is not because the core function is the materials that are surrounding this core components that breaks down and causing the entire machine to be useless. So when we look into material longevity, we need to think about the characteristics that material has to fulfill in order to support the core function of the material. So yes, material longevity, and also not just longevity. Also think about if one day the product is done, it's reached the end of its service, how environmentally friendly it is. In terms of recycling. And there are many ways of recycling, chemical recycling, mechanical recycling. Is a lot about shredding things down, and it doesn't change the property of the material. It's just mainly grinding things into pieces or powder and then form them into something else. And we also have chemical recycling. It's about for example, metals basically you put them back into the big hot stove, and then you try to make them into virgin material again. And one challenge for plastic, for example, for plastic kettles, you may have red, black, all kinds of color, rainbow if you like. Once it's been colored, there's no way you can, at the moment, as far as I know, you can return them back to white color. It's just doesn't. You can only make them into black. So you can only downcycle them. So in a way, if sometimes you say, okay, things are from recycled. Yes, it's better than burning them, not using them, but still, when you downcycle them, it can only get worse. It will ultimately reach a point that it cannot be used at all. So when you choose material for a product, think about this later. When you reach the end of product life cycle, what's a better material for that purpose? So that's enough said about product design. We'll stop here. And okay, let's get down to how Internet of Things can enable circular economy. So we've talked about the key principles and how in theory things can be implemented, but we don't see much going on at the moment. I mean, there are some things, but not as much as we would like to see. So there are some hurdles. We'll take four for the purpose of this presentation, but we can really go down to details, talk entire day about what's stopping us from going more circular. So culture, technological, market, regulatory. Culture, there are two aspects. There are on the consumers. Culture refers to, so research suggests that circular economy still remains to be a niche subject amongst sustainable professionals. So for people who study sustainability, for people who work on this field, you've only heard of circular economy because you work in sustainability. Not a lot of general population knows much about it. It's like the misconception, oh, I've heard of circular economy, it's about recycle, right? But this kind of culture is the awareness of circular economy. And then also in a commercial level for businesses, we see a lot of reluctant, hesitant culture within companies to embrace the circular economy movement. And there are many reasons, because again, when companies see consumers don't know much about circular economy, I mean, they are reluctant to offer a value proposition that's around it. And also, to implement a lot of these new initiatives, you require a lot of upfront investment, and longer payback period is also a major hurdle, leading to the hesitant company culture. And then technological barrier, for example, what we just talked about, the recycling techniques, mechanical recycling, chemical recycling. For some of the materials, it costs more to reprocess them than creating new virgin materials. So this is one of the technological barriers we need to overcome. And there are other technological, for example, on lack of data. How can you track, trace products that's basically having the data, the insight of different product and services out there, how do you monitor the stock flow of different materials floating in the society? There are a lot of technological barriers to actually implement any initiatives. And then the market is largely referring to, for example, in 2020, especially if you study finance economics, you may remember there was a period of time the derivatives of the oil is actually negative, meaning it costs negative to actually buy oil, which is bonkers, right? So putting that into practice, how can you compete with if the cost of plastic is so low, how can you compete with that to try experiment with new innovative materials, which is normally more costly? So that's the market barrier. The plastic and environmentally less friendly materials are too cheap to resist. And then the last will be regulatory. There is little, in relative terms, from regulatory or governmental incentives to support circular sustainable initiatives. And in relative terms, compared, for example, what oil and gas industry, the kind of incentive subsidies they receive in relative terms. There's not enough regulatory pressure for companies to remove single-use plastics, for example, and all this. We're getting there, but it's just in relative term, we're still lacking, if we think climate change is the urgency. So that's CE barriers as in a nutshell. So how Internet of Things can overcome, can address a lot of these barriers. So here we're going to use, excuse me, the again, the WeCat Smart Wi-Fi Kettle as an example on how it potentially in the future, not right now, can overcome, can help. How can we become more circular from a wee kettle? So key IoT capabilities include tracking, monitoring, controlling, optimization, and design evolution. We'll explain them one by one through this example. So apparently in the UK, the electric kettle consumes 70% of the energy consumption in the kitchen, and the energy waste mainly from a kettle mainly comes from two sources. Number one is from overfilling the kettle. So, excuse me. In the morning, when you just wake up and need to make a tea, and a cup of tea is only 250 ml, and some of you may just overfill, half of the kettle or the entire jug of kettle, but you only use 250 ml of them, and the rest is it's not used. So that's one source, a majority source of energy waste coming from the kettle. And the second would be the temperature. So most kettles only support the boiling feature. So you boil the water up to 100 degrees, but nobody's going to drink tea from 100 degrees. We probably only drink it when it's around 70, 75. So that's 25 degrees is lost. So that's two major source of energy waste coming from kettle. And by monitoring how users, so with a smart Wi-Fi kettle, all these features are actually built in. By monitoring, by helping the users monitoring their user behavior, and also use optimization, algorithms, we may be able to study the user behavior and send a push-up notification to your phone saying, hey, did you know by putting less amount of water in your kettle, you can save X amount of energy in your utility bill. Or hey, you only drink your tea at 80 degrees, but you always boil it to 100. You can actually save 20% of your energy bill by choosing the 80 degree default temperature target instead of boiling to 100. So and basically personalize the program for the individual user and save energy. And also by so that's one aspect, by monitoring and optimization using these two features. And when we comes to the actual material side of the kettle, if unfortunately in a few years time the kettle breaks down, as the service provider, we could in theory know where the product is and why is it broken, which component has got a failure, and hopefully come up with be more proactive and suggest a replacement service, or just unfortunately taking it back and then recycle it properly. And there's a concept about material passport. Basically, doesn't matter what product it is, a material passport is basically, it's like a name tag, for example. By scanning this this item, what exactly what are the different components there are in this product and what are different materials they are. So by being able to track this kind of product usage, and when it reaches the end of product life cycle, we would be able to in fact recycle and reprocess the material much more efficiently. And then the last is design evolution. Design evolution is actually already widely used in web design. We look at the data analytics at the back end of the website, and then we use this data to make more informed decisions on what features we would like to have, what we need to change on the web design. And it's similar. It's the exact same concept if we want to apply in hardware, say in home appliance industry, but it's not yet widely applied. But with IoT technologies, you will be able to have a better real-time insight into consumer behavior, and then understand where products is what's the most used features, or where things normally go wrong, and use all this data to implement into your next product design. And at the moment, it's not much, from my observation, not really thought through. A lot of when product managers in home appliance industry, when they talk about product design, it's a lot about the look, the material, more for aesthetic purpose, what's trending. instead of thinking about the later stage of the supply chain. So that's design evolution, something that IoT can really empower the home appliance industry or general any hardware products to achieve. So if you are interested in reading further, these are the references used in this presentation. And that's pretty much all from me. So I hope you enjoyed that. Now, let's go to some discussions. Any questions or ideas you would like to share with me? I don't know if we have anything on YouTube or any other channel.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for your talk. It's been wonderful to hear about the circular economy, something that I personally didn't know a great deal about. There is a 20-second delay, so questions will start hopefully pouring in soon. But there was a comment that was left earlier, which was when you were talking about the circular economy, and the person said, I've heard some similar concepts to this in the donut economics model. There's no question, that is just a comment. So if you'd like to maybe say something about that.
Sure. I personally love donut economy, and there's a book written by Kate. What's her last name? I can't really pronounce her last name. But if you just Google donut economy, she's written an entire book about it, and the Netherlands is huge about donut economy. It's so circular economy. There are many different school of thoughts that actually help build up the circular economy, or runs in parallel with that. Whether it's you probably heard of cradle to cradle, biomimicry, and donut economy. They are not they are complementary to each other, and donut economy goes. So I would say circular economy is focused a lot more on the material efficiency and on the actual practical operational side of how the society should operate, whereas donut economy, it's probably one level higher. Is not just about the materials, how the site should operate. It talks a lot about what's the ultimate society, right? How do we measure? In contrast to right now, the economic principles we have back from Adam Smith time, or John Maynard Keynes, and all this something from the last centuries. So it's not yes, they're all relevant, but it's not contradicting, and it's great to if you are studying economics, or if you're not studying economics, it's a great book to read. It's a great concept to be familiarized with.
Okay, thank you for that. I have a question myself, actually. So, you used to work in investment banking, and now you're in tech and IoT. So, what compelled you to make the switch? And I would just like to hear a bit more about that transition.
Sure. Very good question. So yes, like I mentioned, I used to work in the asset management arm of Deutsche Bank. And I left to do this. So there are many factors driven this career switch. So I would say, okay, it's a bit of entrepreneurship talk, right? So it's a bit of personal story. So I've lost a very close family member when I was in university, and I realized, that the most important thing to me in life is to be able to spend time with people I love, and the opportunity cost of choosing how you spend your time, by making every decision, there is an opportunity cost to every decision. You're forgoing certain things in order to spend your time on certain things. We will only have 24 hours a day. Once it's gone, it's gone. It's totally refundable, irreversible thing in life. So when I was working in the bank, I have to be in the office by 7 a.m. in the morning and send out a report by 7:30 a.m. in the morning. And I want to arrive at the office, fresh, ready to roll. But being a just switch from a student to young professionals that always, need that extra 5 minutes of sleep. And then I just wish if I have something that I can just, when I wake up in the morning, say, my coffee or tea will be ready. That would be great. Something, this idea bothered me long enough. I probably have thought about it for a year, and then Amazon launches Alexa. And I thought, what if I can say, Alexa, turn on a kettle, and then the water will be ready. I can make my tea or coffee. And again, just this idea bothered me long enough. And I thought, you know what, you only regret the things you don't do. So, the finance industry will always be there. You can always come back to this industry, but this new innovation, this new idea, this trend, with IoT and voice technology may not be here 5 years, 10 years down the line. So, being young, that's, time is our capital. That's we're at the age where we can take lots of risk and then still get knocked down and, pick ourselves up again. Without losing much. So it's not like when we are, 40, 50s, we may be married, have kids, and there are certain risks you just prefer not to take. So essentially, yes, this idea just fascinates me. It's about saving time, being able to multitask better, and also just taking the risk of, giving it a go and not to have any regrets.
Wow, that's an amazing story. I've got another question, which is, when you were starting up WeCat, what were the sort of significant hurdles and challenges that you ran into, and were any of them unforeseen, or did you kind of see them coming?
Good question. So 2 questions in this question. What are the hurdles I did not see coming? Second, would you remind me, what's the second one?
What were some of the challenges in general, and if some of them were unforeseen, or if you saw them coming?
Okay, the first one. Okay, the hurdles. So I would say it's okay. So in general, it may not be early stage. So right now, the product has just been launched 3 months ago. And so far, the feedback has been great. People love it, and there's nothing much on the design. The idea, the value proposition of the product is great. But what I did not see coming was that I actually spend 60% of my time on the operational side of things, on quality assurance. The product is great, but then there's always different challenges from, the manufacturers. Their quality assurance is not great. People receive the product with the packaging that's broken, or all these kind of trivial things that I did not foresee. We spent a lot of time focusing on creating a user-friendly product, and it is, but then we end up a lot of things we did not foresee, all this operational aspect. So it's just life. It's not always exciting. We have to spend time overcoming this operational side of things. So that's something I did not see coming when I first started out, and still is an ongoing challenge. Every day you wake up, I don't know what challenges life is going to throw at me today, and it's different every day. And another thing I did not foresee when I first started is how much the UK is relying on oversee whether it's manufacturing support or anything. In the UK, it's we're very dependent on expertise resources outside the country. For example, we are not able to manufacture things locally. There's theoretically we can, but then the kettle wouldn't cost what it costs now if we were to decide to do everything locally. So in the UK, there are very limited things we can actually do in the UK. So yes, and it's very relevant topic right now. Being in a pandemic, there are a lot of discussion on how can we build diversity. How can we have more localized product and services in order to be more robust, be self-sufficient, and not to rely on overseas supply chain supplies. So that's something, yes, is you have to be really resourceful and think outside your geographical locations, and because they may not be here, they're somewhere, say in China or in the States, in Italy, or in the Middle East. You never know who you're going to end up working with. So yes, I think that's probably two things I can share with you. Yes.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Because we often reflect upon how manufacturing has kind of left the West and gone elsewhere. So that was pretty interesting to hear about from your
Yes,
perspective.
unfortunately, but with a lot of this circular economy movement, with a lot of discussions on remanufacturing, refurbishing, we may be able to see some more localized remanufacturing services, like the Edinburgh Remakery we have in Leith. We may be able to see more of this in the future. So gradually, with this, we may be able to bring the manufacturing back to to where we are. So I'm conscious about the time. I'm not sure if there are more questions. If there's no question, and just for feedback, if there's one thing you would like to you would like to take away from this talk, I would appreciate if you can share in the comments or anywhere. Let me know what's the one thing you've taken away from this talk. It will be very helpful to know what's been helpful from this talk.
Well, I have one thing that I can say for sure for myself, which is that this is not something that I ever thought about or knew anything about, and it's very interesting to because it is such a different model to the one that we're used to and the one that governs the world that we live in. And I mean, just the very notion of sort of not owning a product as such, but renting it for the duration that you use it, and then it has a life beyond that is so radical. It's such a simple idea, but it's so radical at the same time.
Yes, and still there's we need a culture shift, a mindset shift from the consumers in order to roll out this on a larger scale. Not everyone are really accepting this idea of not owning your own kettle or your own coffee machine. It's just a strange concept to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if there's no further questions or comments, I would like to say thank you very much for your attention and involvement in the discussion. If you have any question, or if you like to have any other discussions, feel free to find me on LinkedIn. Just be my full name, Chunli Zhang, or you can find me on social media. You can find me on Instagram, where I share a lot of the recent books I've read and quotes on entrepreneurship for my own self-pep talk when I go through challenges. My Instagram handle will be Chunli with 3Z in the end. So looking forward to connecting with some of you. And again, thank you for inviting me to give this talk. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream now.
My pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your